In order to understand how this all plays out, the definition of conflict must be understood. It's a condition when you perceive, real or not, that somebody or something is preventing you from achieving your goal. All right, so let me repeat that. It is when you perceive, real or not, doesn't matter, because it's your reality. When you perceive that somebody, some person, or something, an entity, or the lack of money, or some other kind of situation is preventing you, is getting in your way, is not going to allow you to be successful. All right? Now you think about it. It makes sense out on the basketball court. Your competition is going to try and keep you from scoring your baskets, right? So the conflict is that you got to get past them to get to the basket. It's easy to figure out in athletics. But in the workplace, here is what it comes down to. There is competition naturally for resources. And when you're working in the business world, the competition for resources include time and money. Time and money. Everything boils down to that in the business. If you have personnel, if you want to hire somebody, it's going to cost money. Because you got to pay them, you got to recruit them, you got to train them, and you got to pay them. You got to reward them, you got to keep them. All right. If you want, a goal, or you set goals for the organization, or for your work team, or even for yourself, it's going to take time. And what kind of resources, i.e., money and people, are going to be thrown at you, given to you. So what happens is that business units compete for time and money, attention and money, right? So keep that in mind. So on pages, if you scroll down in your textbook to page 119, there's a bunch of terms here that you're going to want to know for your test, but also just to have recognition of them. The first one is what's known as saving face. I recommend that is one that you include in your term project. What is acceptable behaviors in the culture of the country that you are studying for how to protect a person's dignity? All right? So saving face is doing what you can to prevent humiliation, to prevent being embarrassed, right? And sometimes when you are going through this, especially foxes are good at this, is to recognize what can we do, what can we say that will not be an embarrassment. Very important skill set. And you listen to that and you take culture into context. And that is called face negotiation. There's a whole long video that I've uploaded for you if you want to look at it. You also look in terms of if the country that you're studying is considered to be individualistic or collectivist. All right? The United States is individualistic. That's why we have lots and lots of competitors, lots of sharks. That's ingrained in us from when we're small. You know? How'd you do on the race today? How did you do on your test? Did you get the best grade in the class? You know, blah, blah, blah. So we have that as much as our culture. Collectivist cultures, however, do not want that. I mean, interestingly, Australia, colonized by England, they have evolved and they are not as individualistic as you would think. Australia actually do not believe in what's known as one-upsmanship. They don't want one person to think they are better than anybody else. All right, and so there's an interesting behavior with that. Okay, so there's some information here about, do you see yourself as part of a group? Are you self-construal or are you independent self-construal? And, do you construct yourself as part of a group or as an individual? All right. The next thing to recognize is we're going to jump over to page 121. In the video that I recorded on Monday, I talk about triggers. What are some triggers that will set a person off? Okay? Every one of you have a trigger, and they might be different. All right? So, sometimes it might be a tone of voice that will be a trigger to a turtle. Like voices raised and people are yelling at each other and the turtle retreats, right? Or the commentator may be seeing two family members fighting over something, like doing the dishes, and to keep peace, the commentator will say, hey, you guys, I'll do them. And step up and take them. Okay? Because that's the trigger. You don't want to see your loved ones in a fight, so you're going to step up, I'll just do it. Another word for teddy bear sometimes is victim. And another word for our competitors and sharks is bullies. And everybody has their own kind of triggers. And so what you want to do is to figure out what they are. Some people cannot stand to be criticized. They will get defensive and they will attack. Some people, if you put too many demands on a person, they'll feel overwhelmed and they'll come out fighting. If anybody's ever been in a poor relationship where you've been in a divorce or separation situation, a cumulative annoyance. I'm going to talk about that a lot with our next module that talks about a relationship, the stages of relationships. And if you're in a relationship with somebody and everything that person does starts to irritate you to death, now you can't even stand the way they chew their food. Okay? That is an accumulated annoyance, and those build up. Being rejected, or feeling rejection, or feeling unimportant. Those are things that can be a trigger for somebody to move into one of these styles. Some people just plain like to argue for the sake of arguing. Some people, will have mutual hostility. There's some couples that I know you look at and you think, what do they see in each other? I mean, they're constantly bickering or something like that. You're going like, what? Okay, well, they're getting something out of that relationship. Mind reading, oh, I know what you're thinking. No, you don't. You don't know what another person's thinking, but you claim you do. Oh, and you jump to wrong conclusions. One-upping, you can look at all these on your own. But on page 124 is a critical first step, all right, for recognizing what you can do toward conflict resolution. All right, now, we've talked about what is conflict. Okay, I gave you that definition. We talked about conflict management. This is all management. These are the styles for how you handle it, you manage it, so it doesn't make you, truly, truly crazy. The next step that we're going to talk about really goes into, starts on page 124 and then goes into 125, is what we refer to as resolution. Conflict resolution. How can we resolve the conflict? Either one-to-one, you with the other person, or one group with the other group, or you have a third person, mediator, come in and facilitate the resolution. Sometimes you just have to have a third party come in, a neutral third party. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So recognize that there's conflict management, but management does not mean resolution. Management just means coping. So what you want to do is to move past this and get to over on page 124, begin with validating the other persons or the other groups' feelings and ideas. Feelings and ideas. You do not discount it. You do not say they don't need to worry about it or they don't have a right to feel that way. No, no, no. You simply recognize and you validate, I see that this causes you pain. Or I'm hearing that this situation makes you very angry. Right? And validating is a way of repeating back what you are seeing and what you're hearing, and confirming with the person that your understanding is accurate. And once a person feels like their feelings and their thoughts are validated, they're not being brushed off, now they are willing to work to a resolution. Because now we're starting to meet halfway. Okay? Questions so far? Yes? No? Maybe? All right. Well, on this page, we have on page 125, we have 5 steps for negotiation. You can read these on your own, but let me just give you some quick overview. In the 5 steps, all right, and these are listed again, they start on page 125, and they do include some skills for negotiation. And remember that the fox is the one that's the most masterful at this. That means that even though that may not be your top rating, you still can move up to being a fox. You can learn these skills. You can even type them on a little piece of paper or a 3x5 index card, and you can keep them close by and pull them out and use them when you need to. All right, the first one is to prepare for the discussion. All right, number 1, your pre-negotiation stage. Set the stage. Set the scene. You know, it's like, be prepared for the battle, but make it be on your battlegrounds. All right? So what you want to do is know who, when, where, why, how. You want to not necessarily be in control, but you want to be able to manage where you are in private, to have this discussion, unless you are male-female, and sometimes you may need to have another person in the room so that nobody accuses you of misconduct like sexual harassment or something. So you think through all those things to make sure you are not placed into what could be perceived as a compromising position. Then the next thing is the opening stage. And you notice here that it's all about we language. All right? So when you express your feelings and your thoughts, you're using I. When you speak about the resolution, now you're going to use we language. All right? Very important. How can we come to terms with this disagreement? How can we work out a a means of handling the dishes on a weekly basis? How can we, all right? So that opening stage really sets the tone for how the rest of the meeting is going to be. If you start out using you, it's going to go to hell really fast. All right? Because that is attacking and that's not going to help. All right, the next stage is to explore. So remember, this is where you find out what's going on. You need to find out from yourself and from the other person, what are the needs and the wants? And you got to prioritize them, right? So you get them out. And I always use pieces of paper. Whenever I would do this with employees, between employees or managers and employees, etc., I always write everything down. You come into my office and you say you're having a conflict with somebody and you need some help on approaching this situation, no problem. I do this with people all the time. I will bring out a piece of paper and I will take notes and I will ask you these kinds of questions to find out what's going on. What's real? What's important? What's the deal breaker kind of thing. So in that exploration stage, you gotta really, really dig deep. And sometimes it's brainstorming and thinking outside of the box. Then at that point, you go to bargaining. All right? Well, if I was to give up this and you were able to get that, do you think we'll be able to get to some positive end? You see? Very valuable. And there's going to be a bunch of these. And so you negotiate back and forth. And it's very powerful. And that's your bargaining. And then the last thing is your settlement stage. And that's when you say, yay! Okay, we got it. Let me recap, summarize what we agreed on. Write it down again. This is our final resolution to this conflict. But then you agree on a time to check back in a week from now, a month from now, over a cup of coffee or a beer. And you say, hey, you remember that time we had that discussion and how's it working out for you? I think it's working out pretty well for me. Are we good, or do we need to tweak, go back to negotiation a little bit? It's pretty cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to get into, all right, I'm going to let the two of you be partners again. And Joseph, I want you to come up here, and Matt, I want you to come up here. Now I'm going to give you a scenario. So everybody turn to page 118 for your scenario. Okay, not too close, just a little bit farther back. All right. So on page 118, there are 3 scenarios. I want you to look through those. I want the two of you to look through those scenarios on page 118. And I want you to pick one of those: money conflict, personality conflict or values, sharing possessions, or noise during parties. Which one do you guys want to see if you can negotiate? Okay, you guys got 2. So you cannot have 2. Okay, we're not doing number 1. All right, so you guys can do 3, 4, or 5. Which one do you want to do? 5? Okay. So now what you guys are going to do is talk through, go through the steps really fast. All right? And you're going to do this in 5 minutes, in basically 2 minutes. Okay, so remember the steps I just went through. And talk to each other.
One was going to be the girl.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it doesn't have to be a girl. They're both roommates. They're all roommates. A girl. Yeah, that's just,
Oh, yeah.
you just be, you're all roommates. Yeah, before you move in. Yeah, you can. Or you get it when you move out. Get it back.
So you get the money back.
Uh-huh. Yeah, as long as you don't break anything and mess up. But that's to cover costs in case you do damage. But if everything is good condition, you don't have to worry about it. Okay, Julia, you saw what we were doing. We're working on those scenarios. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off our video.